In this episode, we focus on a challenge that sits at the center of security leadership, creating accountability that actually works when people are busy, priorities collide, and the organization has real friction. If you are new to cybersecurity, accountability can sound like a strict concept, as if it simply means blaming someone when something goes wrong. In healthy security programs, accountability is the opposite of blame, because it is about making responsibilities clear, making progress visible, and ensuring that problems are addressed before they turn into incidents. Real friction shows up as delays, disagreements, unclear ownership, competing deadlines, and the natural human tendency to avoid uncomfortable work. The goal is to design accountability so it survives those conditions, meaning tasks still get done even when nobody feels like doing them. By the end of this lesson, you should understand what practical accountability looks like and how to build it without damaging trust. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Accountability begins with clarity because you cannot hold a team accountable for an outcome if the expected outcome is vague. Clarity means defining what needs to happen, who owns it, and what success looks like in a way that different people interpret the same way. For example, saying a system should be secure is not clear enough, because nobody can measure it and everyone can argue about what it means. Saying that critical systems must apply high-priority patches within a defined time window is clearer, because it creates a shared expectation and a measurable target. Clarity also requires defining scope, because teams often resist accountability when it feels unlimited or unfair. When scope is clear, teams can plan and prioritize, which makes accountability achievable rather than just threatening. Real accountability also requires aligning responsibility with authority. If a team is held responsible for something but lacks the ability to make decisions, schedule changes, or access needed resources, accountability becomes a trap. This is a common source of friction in security because security outcomes often depend on multiple teams. For instance, a product team may be responsible for fixing vulnerabilities, but deployment may depend on operations, and maintenance windows may depend on business stakeholders. If the product team is held accountable without the power to coordinate those dependencies, the organization creates resentment and delays. A healthier approach is to define shared responsibilities with clear handoffs and clear decision rights, so accountability reflects how work actually flows. When authority matches responsibility, accountability becomes motivating rather than demoralizing. Another important idea is the difference between being responsible and being accountable. Responsibility often means doing the work, while accountability means owning the outcome and ensuring the work happens. In practice, a team may do tasks while another person or group remains accountable for the final result. For example, a security team might perform scanning and provide findings, while the system owner is accountable for remediation. That system owner might coordinate other teams, negotiate timelines, and confirm closure criteria are met. Without an accountable owner, work can be performed endlessly without results, because no one is obligated to drive the last mile. This is why accountability is often assigned to the person or team closest to the business impact, because they have the strongest incentive to ensure the outcome is real. Friction often appears when accountability feels like surveillance rather than support. If teams believe security is using accountability to catch mistakes and punish people, they will hide problems and delay communication. That behavior makes security worse, not better, because hidden problems grow until they become incidents. A practical accountability system communicates that the goal is risk reduction and reliability, and that visibility is a tool for collaboration. This includes creating an environment where teams can raise issues early, such as lack of resources or conflicting deadlines, without being shamed. Accountability still exists, but it is paired with problem-solving, not just judgment. When teams believe accountability is fair, they cooperate more, and friction decreases because people stop defending themselves and start working on the shared problem. One way to make accountability durable is to build it into routine processes rather than relying on heroic reminders. If security tasks depend on someone remembering to do them, they will be skipped when the organization is under pressure. For example, if access reviews are supposed to happen quarterly, that should be part of a predictable process with owners, timelines, and review checkpoints. If security reviews are required for changes, that requirement should be integrated into change workflows so it happens consistently rather than being a special request. The point is not to create bureaucracy. The point is to make secure behavior the default path. When accountability is embedded in routines, friction has less opportunity to derail the work. Metrics can support accountability, but only if they are chosen and used carefully. In a low-trust environment, metrics become weapons, and people learn to game the numbers. In a high-trust environment, metrics become shared indicators that help teams spot problems and improve. For example, measuring the time critical vulnerabilities remain open on critical systems can help a team see whether its remediation process is working. If the metric worsens, the conversation should focus on why and how to fix the process, not on humiliating the team. When metrics are paired with support, they encourage learning and steady improvement. When metrics are paired with punishment, they encourage hiding and superficial compliance, which ultimately increases exposure. Another key element is defining escalation paths that are predictable and fair. In real organizations, some security work will be delayed, and not every delay is irresponsible. Sometimes a fix is risky and needs testing. Sometimes a system is fragile, and sometimes a business deadline is truly urgent. Accountability is not about forcing every task to happen instantly. It is about ensuring that delays are visible, justified, and managed as conscious risk decisions. A good escalation path might start with team-level discussion, then move to cross-team coordination, and finally to leadership involvement if a risk remains unaddressed beyond agreed thresholds. The goal of escalation is not punishment. It is decision-making at the right level. When escalation is consistent, teams stop treating it as a personal attack and start treating it as a normal part of managing trade-offs. Accountability also becomes easier when the organization agrees on risk-based prioritization. Friction often happens because teams have too much to do and everything feels urgent. If security cannot explain why a particular issue matters more than another, teams may assume security is being arbitrary. Risk-based prioritization means focusing on what can cause the greatest harm, what is most likely to be exploited, and what affects critical assets. When teams share that prioritization logic, accountability discussions become simpler because everyone understands why certain tasks have deadlines and others have flexibility. This is especially important for remediation work, where backlog is common and capacity is limited. Accountability becomes sustainable when it is tied to realistic prioritization rather than impossible expectations. A subtle but powerful aspect of accountability is defining what closure means, because unclear closure leads to endless reopenings and repeated arguments. For example, if a vulnerability is marked as fixed, what evidence confirms that it is actually fixed, and who verifies it? If a policy exception is granted, what conditions must be met, what compensating controls are required, and when the exception will be reviewed? If an incident is closed, what learning actions must be completed, such as root cause analysis or improvements to prevent recurrence? Clear closure criteria reduce friction because teams know what is expected and can plan accordingly. It also prevents the pattern where security and other teams argue repeatedly because each side thinks the work is done or not done based on different definitions. Accountability that works in friction also requires investing in relationships because people cooperate more when they believe the other side understands their constraints. Security leaders who listen to operational realities can design accountability that is strict on outcomes but flexible on how teams get there. For example, security can require that critical exposure be reduced within a time frame, while allowing teams to choose the safest implementation path. Security can require evidence of control effectiveness, while collaborating on how to collect that evidence without unnecessary burden. This approach reduces friction because it respects professional expertise and local context. The boundary remains. Risk must be managed and commitments must be honored, but the method can be collaborative. When you combine these elements, accountability becomes a system that helps an organization do hard security work reliably. It starts with clear expectations and measurable outcomes. It aligns responsibility with authority, it embeds secure tasks into routine workflows, and it uses metrics as shared signals rather than as weapons. It includes predictable escalation so unresolved risks become conscious decisions at the right level, and it defines closure criteria so work is truly completed. Most importantly, it treats friction as normal and designs around it rather than pretending everyone will always agree or have unlimited capacity. That is how accountability becomes durable, and that durability is what improves security posture over time.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.